Okay. Module 5, and then chapter 3.
Yeah.
Okay, we're talking about estimating fractions, sums, and differences. So just like we did yesterday and the day before, we're talking about sums and differences. We're adding and subtracting with fractions. However, we're going to look at estimating those things. So it's going to be used, we're going to be using benchmarks a lot. So our benchmark fractions are 0, 1/4, 1/2, 3/4, and 1/2. Does that make sense? Yes? Benchmark fractions? Okay. So Kimberly will be riding her bike to school this year. The distance from her house to the end of the street is about 1/6 of a mile. The distance from the end of the street to the school is about 3/8 of a mile. How far is Kimberly's house from school? So we're going to use benchmark fractions to find a reasonable estimate by rounding my fractions to either 0, 1/2, or 1. Okay. So in this case, we're just talking about using those three. Okay. So we're going to find what it's closest to. Okay. So I'm going to place my point at 1/6 on my number line. So follow along. You're making a point at 1/6 on my number line. So my fraction is between what two benchmarks? What two benchmarks am I looking at? Elizabeth. Oh, the benchmark though. It's the blue. It's half. So my fraction is between 0 and half. The fraction 1/6 is closer to the benchmark what? Is it closer to 0 or is it closer to 1/2? Hey, 0. So I'm rounding to what? 0. So then I'm going to place a point at 3/8 on my number line. I place it there. My fraction is also between what two numbers? Lexi. 0 and a half. 0 and half. The fraction 3/8 is closer to the benchmark what? Which one is it closer to? Patient. A half. So then I round to what? A half. So now I'm going to add my rounded fractions. Remember, I rounded to 0. And then I rounded to half. And I add those together. What is 0 plus 1/2? 1/2. So Kimberly's house is about half a mile from the school. Simple enough. We look at my number lines. I round according to my benchmarks. And then I solve. Simple. Now I'm going to use mental math. So I can compare the numerator and the denominator to round a fraction and find a reasonable estimate. So if I look at 9/10, right? Remember, the numerator is about the same as my denominator. So what does that mean it's close to? Raise your hand. Peyton. It's close to 1/2 because 9 is only 1 away from being 10, right? So 9/10 is really close to 1/2. Now I need to round 5/8. Think about the numerator, right, compared to the denominator. 5 is really close to about half of the denominator, right? Because what's half of my denominator? What's half of my denominator, Joseph? 4, right? So 4/8 would be half. So this fraction is closest to 1/2. So now I'm going to use those numbers to solve. So I have 1 minus 1/2. What is 1 minus a half? 1/2. 1/2. Please don't shout out. So 9/10 minus 5/8 is about 1/2. Right? What other way could you use benchmarks to estimate? How would I use benchmarks to estimate? We kind of already did that, right? We used the information we learned on the previous page to solve using that, right? But I would use, what did we use on the other page to help us look and see where our fraction falls? What did we use? What was the visual they gave me? A what? What was this called? What's this? Number line. So I could use a number line to help me solve and find something close to the benchmarks. Okay. So remember, I'm finding the closest benchmark. Remember, my benchmarks are 0, half, and 1 whole. 5, 6. What is that closest to? Remember my denominator and my numerator. What's the difference between them? What do you think it's closest to? 1 whole. Why do you think 1 whole? Yeah. So I have 5, 6, meaning that I'm really close. I'm really close. I'm only 1 away from filling up the parts of my whole, right? So I'm going to round it to 1. What about 3/8? What is that one closest to? Think about it. 0, half, or 1 whole. Lexi, what do we think? Why would we say half?
Because if you add 1 and 4 and 4/8.
So I would only have to add 1 to get to halfway. Because 4/8 is half. And 3/8 is really close to that. So now I'm going to estimate my problem. I'm going to add 1 plus 1 plus a half. So my answer is what?
1 and 1/2.
1.5. Let's do it the next 3, okay? So 5/9. What do you think about that one? Think about 0, 1/2, or 1. What do you think that's closest to? 0, half, or 1? Okay. Half. Why half?
9%.
Right, so my halfway point for 9 would be about like 4.5, right? So 5 is really close to that. So I'm going to make 5/9 half. What about 3/8? What is that closest to? We kind of did that one just previously, right? 3/8 was closest to what? Half minus a half is 0. Simple as that. Let's look at number 3. 5/6 plus 2/5. So 5/6, what is that closest to? What is 5/6 closest to, Layla? 1 whole, right? Because I'm only 1 away from being 1 whole, right? Plus 2/5. What do you think about 2/5? What is that closest to? 0, a half, or 1? Kason.
Because it's like
Good. Good. So it's an odd number. So really it would be close to 2.5, right? That would be half of 5. But in this case, 2 is really close to that halfway point. So I'm going to make it a half. So then I would get 1 and a half as my answer. Number 4. 9/10 minus 1/9. 9/10 is closest to what? Angela. 1 whole. What about 1/9? What is that closest to, Bryce? 0. So 1 minus 0 is? 1 minus 0? 1. 1 minus 0 is 1. Okay. Do we follow? We see in the pattern, it's not that difficult, it's just seeing which one's closest. Let's do some word problems. So, how do you know whether your estimate for 9/10 plus 3 6/7 would be greater than or less than the actual sum? How do you know whether my estimate, if I added these two together, would be greater than or less than the actual sum? Okay. So for both numbers, I would round up. So that would mean that my estimated answer would be greater than or less than. If I round up, that means it will be what? Greater than, right? My estimate will be greater because I'm going to round both of my numbers up. I would be overestimating, right? Okay. So my estimate would be greater than the actual because I round up. My estimate would be greater than my actual answer because I rounded both my numbers up. So we have to kind of look at this one a little bit. Nick estimated that 5/8 plus 4/7 is about 2. So let's look at those numbers, and I want to look at what the actual answer is. So let's look at 5/8 plus 4/7. 5/8 is closest to what? What is 5/8 closest to? 0, 0, half, or 1? Joseph. Half, right? I'm closest to half. So 5, because 5 is really close to 4, and 4 is half of 8. What about 4/7? What is that closest to? 0, half, or what? 0, half, or 1? What do you think? Lane, what do you think? Is it closest to 0, half, or 1? What do you think? Half. Good job. So I add half plus a half gives me a what? Whole. Is that about 2? Is 1 the same thing as 2? No, it's not. Why is his estimate not reasonable? Oh, I want raised hands, please. Bryce, why is his answer not reasonable? Okay, Nick rounded too high. He probably rounded both of these numbers to what? 1. Not 1/2. Okay. We're going to pause right here.